Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America was one of the first Bolliger Mabillard hypercoasters, and it still may be their most unique one. Unlike most hypercoasters that feature a long out and back layout, Raging Bull is a rare hyper twister. I've seen this coaster get a lot of criticism over the years, and to that I just have one question. Did you ride it in the back? Find out why in this review. Six Flags Great America has worked with Bolliger and Mabillard ever since their inception. The park installed B&M's first roller coaster in 1990 in Iron Wolf, which was a stand-up roller coaster. Then in 1992, B&M built Batman the Ride for Great America, the world's first inverted roller coaster. The latter was a particularly big hit and still one of the park's more popular attractions to this day. Six Flags Great America clearly was not afraid to buy a B&M prototype, so when the company unveiled their hypercoaster model in the late 1990s, the park was one of the first to purchase one. Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens Williamsburg would open first in March of 1999 as the world's first B&M hyper, but Raging Bull would open just 2 months later in May of 1999. The ride is still arguably the park's star attraction, and it dominates Great America's skyline. It's hard to imagine this park without Raging Bull, but what if I told you the park almost got a Mr. Freeze clone instead? Park Pros is a full video on this topic, but Great America originally proposed a hypercoaster for the 1998 season where Camp Cartoon exists today. This was a super compact plot of land, so not even a hypercoaster like Raging Bull could fit over there. But a Premier Rides launch coaster like Mr. Freeze could. The park submitted a height variance for a coaster similar in height to the Mr. Freeze clones, but then Great America suddenly canceled their plans. The culprit? The unreliability of the LIM launches of the chain's trio of premier launch coasters. Both Mr. Freeze clones and Six Flags Great Adventure's Batman Robin the Chiller were delayed a year due to technical issues. The cancellation of this ride potentially accelerated Great America's plans to get a conventional hypercoaster. A popular rumor is that Raging Bull was originally intended for Six Flags St. Louis, but the cancellation of the premier launch coaster switched the plans to Raging Bull to go to the Gurnee, Illinois park. However, it is possible Great America would have received a hypercoaster like this anyway. Back then, the Six Flags chain was buying big coasters like Drunken Sailors, and it wouldn't be unprecedented for them to add major coasters in back-to-back years to one of their biggest parks. The Southwest Territory opened in 1996 with some flat rides and Viper, whose entrance was moved to the new land. This western-themed area always had room for a second major coaster, and that coaster became Raging Bull. The ride's story is simple. A bull is terrorizing a town. The ride doesn't really have any theming, but the orange track looks good, and I really like this coaster's logo. Raging Bull usually has a long wait most days, but that's entirely due to the ride's popularity. This coaster can run up to 3 trains, each seating up to 36 riders across 9 rows, and the crew working this ride is super efficient. The ride will run 3 trains in busy days without stacking. On days when the ride ran just 2 trains, the crew was dispatching trains so quickly, there were several points when the crew was actually just standing around waiting for a train to return. That's how quickly they were getting them out. The efficiency of this crew was reminiscent of another B&M hyper in Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. The only time this crew wasn't efficient was when the ride unfortunately received virtual reality for the 2016 season. Thankfully, that trend did not last across the chain. It certainly helps how easy the restraints are to check. Raging Bull is just clamshell harnesses and no seatbelts, and I love these restraints. The contouring is super comfortable, and you have plenty of room to experience the airtime. When you reach the station, you have your choice of rows. The front always will have the longest wait, but no matter what, wait for the back. I don't care if it's an extra 8 cycles. It's worth it. Raging Bull is arguably the worst hypercoaster up front, or in the middle. It's even worse than the often criticized Giovanola ones. But Raging Bull in the back is a darn good ride. Once dispatched, you turn out of the station and ascend the 202-foot or 62-meter tall lift hill. To your right, you have a full view of the amusement park. To your left, you have a bird's eye view of the Hurricane Harbor Water Park. Once at the top, you navigate a short pre-drop. This was a feature on all the B&Ms in the 1990s to reduce tension on the lift chain, but it has the added benefit of making Raging Bull's first drop extra powerful. With the added speed from the pre-drop, you are flung over that 65-degree first drop. Those in the back get a very strong flagector pop at the start, and you stay out of your seat with that power the entire way down. This may be the best drop on a B&M Hyper between its height and power. The drop is also taller than the lift hill as you plunge into an underground tunnel. And that pullout is pretty forceful too, as I start to see some gray regularly. Raging Bull then navigates a large turnaround, and unfortunately, this element is a dud. It's big, but it just doesn't do anything. Then comes the most controversial part of Raging Bull, the trim brake heard round the world. Without fail, this trim brake always hits. The trim even hits when the park runs Raging Bull in the middle of a snowstorm. And yes, that actually happened. And as an aside, I really have to applaud the park for their willingness to do this, especially because a lot of US parks shut down large coasters in just basic rain. Yet Great America kept their hypercoaster running in the snow, so you can really ride Raging Bull in any weather. Well, except thunderstorms, but that's understandable. But back to that trim. It saps a good amount of speed from the train. This causes those up front to only get a very weak pop of floater airtime. Compare that to the copious amount of floater airtime most B&M Camelbacks typically provide. The back still does get some decent floater airtime in the descent at least. This element is followed by an L-turn. This one does nothing up front, but those in the back will get an itty-bitty pop of airtime in the descent as they're pulled down. You then navigate yet another turnaround that again does nothing. For much of Raging Bull's first half, it just feels like the coaster is going through the motions. The elements are big, but they just don't deliver. The second half thankfully picks things up, if you're in the back. After meekly passing through the mid-course brake run, you abruptly dip back down to the ground. This gives anyone in the back sustained flagector airtime. The subsequent Camelback gives the front row their best bit of airtime. It's very weak floater airtime, but it is mildly sustained. Meanwhile, the back gets another solid dose of floater airtime, and for whatever reason, you really get slammed back down to your seat after this hill. You then twist 270 degrees upwards. It's not too powerful, but the resultant drop is. It's another abrupt one, and those in the back get some nice flagector airtime. Raging Bull then navigates a low turn and ascends a forceful upward spiral. The drop off this element is a lot shallower than the previous ones, so it only gives a tiny pop of airtime in the back. You then twist upwards into the brake run, which gives a little pop of airtime for everyone because of the sharp kink into it. That ends the 5,057 foot, or 1,541 meter long coaster, and all of that track is super smooth. This ride has aged gracefully. Now let's talk about the pacing. Raging Bull's first half has really awkward pacing no matter where you sit. The first drop is awesome in the back, there's no denying that. But that section of the ride is filled with large twisting elements that mostly fail to deliver in the positive or negative G department. And the height of the elements squanders the ride's impressive top speed, plus that trim brake. The second half is much improved in the back as you have 4 impressive drops. There are some turns in between that don't always deliver though. So what would I rate Raging Bull? I would give this B&M Hyper a 7 out of 10. This is an overall score taking everything into consideration. Raging Bull in the back is quite good. That row delivers flagector airtime stronger than most other B&M Hypers because this ride has a nice series of drops. Getting that level of airtime with those clamshell restraints is pure bliss. However, the ride is easily the worst B&M Hyper and possibly the worst overall Hyper in any other row. Raging Bull just doesn't use its speed efficiently enough to produce the airtime or forces you'd expect from a hypercoaster in most seats. Raging Bull is one of the 3 best rides at Six Flags Great America, and if you're a thrill seeker, just make sure to ride this coaster in the back. The experience is night and day. So those are my thoughts on Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America. What are your thoughts on this Hyper? Do you agree this ride is exclusively a back row coaster? Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you consider subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.